So this is a movie about imagination, right? And
Mhm.
given that, you might think there would be some imagination in the script writing, and it just wasn't.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back. The Eye of the Storm podcast. I'm here with my boys Daniel and Hervé.
Yep.
Hi.
And today we'll be discussing imaginary. But before we get into imaginary, is it the imaginary or imaginary? It's imaginary.
Just imaginary.
Imaginary. Before we get into imaginary, guys, what's the best recent thing you guys
Wait,
watched?
hold on. Before we get into that, can we just have a round of applause for our 2 new subscribers? Just like a little.
Oh yeah,
Welcome to the channel, man. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for walking with us.
guys, we're getting there. We're gonna make it soon. 110.
Everybody currently subscribed made it into the top 10.
Shout out to whoever you two are. Shout out to you. Thank you for joining the family. Hopefully, you'll enjoy. But yes, guys, sorry. Best recent things you've seen. Let's go first. Have you guys? Did you guys even watch anything interesting?
I don't think I've got anything this week. I did watch Shogun, but we're reviewing that next week, so I don't actually want to talk about it now. I'm going to save it till next week. So apart from that, I didn't watch anything else. So I'll skip this one.
So I really tried this week, and I just couldn't find anything. I started watching House of the Dragon season 1. So far, I'm not feeling it. I think it's clearly better than the final seasons of Game of Thrones. It's also a lot worse than the early seasons. I've got 2 big problems with it. One is that the writing really relies on characters explaining the rules of their society to each other when they should know this. Like really basic stuff, and it doesn't just happen once or twice. It happens all the time in the first 5 episodes. Maybe in the second half they've gotten that out of the way and it gets better, but it was really clunky, really tedious, really obvious. Also, the plot about the princess who doesn't want to be a princess was done better twice in the main series. Both Arya Stark and Brienne of Tarth are both more interesting versions of that archetype. So is Lyanna Stark, and she's not even in the show. And the fact that so much of that of the show is about that is really tedious, and it just a major stumbling block. But I'm continuing for now because apparently there's major time skips. So eventually that whole thing stops, and maybe I like what comes after better. But yeah, I had like pretty much all of the big fantasy series over the last couple of years have just been train wrecks. And I had high hopes for House of the Dragon, hoping it would be different. It would be at least, and like it is better, but there's a whole bunch of stuff to get over, and maybe I'll come around to it. So that's my short review of House of the Dragon.
Damn, I remember.
I really enjoyed the first season of it. Hopefully you find the second part of the season more interesting when sort of a lot more of like the kind of politics start to kick in and stuff like that. It gets quite interesting. I thought the acting was like, really up to level as well. And I really actually enjoyed a lot of the stories. I know you didn't like the princesses, reluctant.
I mean, I liked it better the first 3 times they did that character type.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like there's this trend in fantasy stories and like even medieval stories at the moment, where they tell stories about usually princesses who rebel against feudalism, but which is a fine thing to do, except they always write these characters as having the mindset of 21st century Americans, right? Like they're not, like their history is full of people who rebelled against the status quo, but they weren't shocked by it, right? They tried to live with it, and they brushed up against the boundaries that society set for them, and then eventually they made the choice to take a stand or whatever it was, right? And but these characters are always written in a way as if like they lived in modern day, and somebody tried to like impose a traditional marriage on them or something. It's just never written in believable ways. But Brienne, for example, and Lyanna Stark were much more nuanced in that on that topic, right? Because they felt like people who lived in a kind of society, and they kept pushing against the boundaries around them, but they weren't shocked that the boundaries existed. And Rhaenyra Targaryen is just throwing this constant tantrum that there's obligations with being a princess, and just like it's not even about doing anything wrong. It's just about not being like it's not believable that this character would act this way, and that screams just kind of laziness on the part of the writers. And because that's like if that was like a side plot, it would be a lot less noticeable. But because it's the main thrust of at least the first half of the season, it's really grating for me.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't pick up on it, or I didn't see it that way when first watching it. But interesting points that you put in there.
I was waiting so long for you to watch the House of Dragons as well, and to find out that you're not liking it. Goddamn.
I mean, I haven't given up on it yet, and maybe like one of the big advantages of House of the Dragon, I think, is that they're not doing one big story, but rather different milestones in the Targaryen dynasty. So if you don't like one storyline, it's not like we have like it's not going to be 8 seasons of that, right? They're going to change it up, and maybe what comes after is more interesting. But it's not a strong start for me.
Is what it is, man.
Can I put Doom Part 2 as the best thing I've watched as well? So I've watched it another time.
Oh, you watched it another time? Was that your 4th time now?
3.
Oh, 3.
Yeah, I stopped after 2. Like that's enough for me for a while.
I've got one more in me. BFI IMAX, April 4th. I'll be there no matter what.
Oh crap!
Fantastic.
Yeah, Dino was amazing. I can't lie to you. Okay. Oh, what did I watch? That was interesting. The Gentleman. Yeah, guys, if you haven't watched that on Netflix, you should definitely go and check that out. It was first a movie. I don't remember what year it came out, but now this one's a series that's just come out on Netflix. Really good. Rich family, guy inherits obviously the house of his, basically guy's father dies. He inherits the house. And then as he's inheriting the house and the land, it's a very big land, very big house. He's been in the house for a couple centuries. I don't know how many centuries, but he's been in the house for a very long time. The father made a deal with a couple of drug dealers for them to do their weed operation on their land. So he's just been introduced to that now as the woman visits him and tells her, okay, we had a deal with your dad. Boom. This is a situation. Obviously, she shows him the whole wheat farm. And then after that, there's a whole bunch of situations where the guy's brother who's inherited everything, gets pretty much their family. Basically, the brother is in debt to a bunch of drug dealers. Now, the brother who inherits the actual land tries to help his brother get out of that situation. And the brother just makes everything worse. And it's just a bunch of situations and wahala and madness that just happen throughout the story. And it's a really good show, man. I was surprised. I was gonna like this. My friend suggested this to me. I wasn't gonna watch it after watching the trailer, but I was like, yo, this is really good. It's really good. There's more to it that happens. He tries to get his family. He basically tries to get the drug dealers off their land, and so obviously that's like the main. I think it builds into that story. So yeah, it's an interesting watch. I think you guys should watch it. It's good. The Gentleman. But okay, we are here. Main event. Imaginary.
Yeah. Jonathan, kick us off.
Well, this is a streaming movie that should have never touched theaters. Look, man, it wasn't bad. It wasn't Night Swim bad. For guys, if you guys don't know, I didn't like Night Swim. So it wasn't Night Swim bad. And the reason why I mentioned Night Swim is because this was a Blumhouse film. And I'm gonna go more into Blumhouse and I'm gonna go into this film. Because this film was okay. It was just, I think I wasn't too fond of the performance, but I believe the reason why I wasn't too fond of the performance was because of the script itself, as in the dialogue. The dialogue is what ruined my experience more so than anything. It's a typical horror film, it's not really a spoiler. Possessed teddy bear, cool. It's a typical horror film. So I think it's a basic film, and it is a basic film that didn't deserve to be in theaters. But because it's a Blumhouse film, and Blumhouse already know that they have a strong following, and they're known for creating low budget films and receiving a lot of profit from it. I think they're taking liberties at this point. Their recent projects since Megan haven't been great. And I think the reason why they're getting away with it is because of Megan and the other, even before Megan, Harvey, you mentioned this before, what was another film that they dropped, which was Get Out? So they've had a lot of success. So I think they're starting to take liberties now where they're taking our support, our support for granted, because they're just creating films that aren't good, man. Like the script, you would have thought was created by ChatGPT. Like honestly, the performance, which annoys me because the woman who was playing Jessica, she wasn't bad. It wasn't great. I just felt like the performance wasn't great because of the dialogue. So yeah, the film was okay. There was some jump scares here and there, but and there was some comedic moments as well. It was mainly from the girl and from the old lady, which that was actually a highlight moment, was the old lady, which I'll mention later, spoiler zone. But listen, overall, the movie's basic, man. It should have gone straight to streaming. It should have gone straight to streaming. It shouldn't have been released in theaters.
You done?
Yeah.
So this was extremely generic. I think you touched on it there. It was, it could have been written by ChatGPT. I feel like this was like an AI script, or it could be perceived as an AI script. I feel like everything that it does is like very generic. Like the conflict between like the stepmom and the daughters and stuff like that is like very generic. Like the whole kind of like evil like teddy bear just seems like a very like generic idea as well. It wasn't scary. Again, I don't like horror, but this wasn't scary. I wasn't like in the cinema like scared of anything. Even like the whole like jump scare stuff, it just seemed generic. And I've only watched a handful of horror movies, but I'm kind of over the whole like, oh, is there something in the background? Is there something coming? Is there something coming? No, there's not. And I'm like completely over that type of horror. I actually thought the little girl did okay. She started off a bit stale, a bit wooden, but like throughout like the movie, she got a little bit better for me. I actually enjoyed her performance a little bit more as the film progressed. But yeah, like the third act got really weird, and then people might have different opinions on this, but there's like a point in the movie where they go into a place, and at that point I'm like, okay, this is just getting a bit ridiculous. It's just getting a bit bonkers. I tried to be on board with the first kind of part of the movie as much as possible, like the whole kind of like psychological thriller side of things. There was like one interesting twist, but it doesn't really get taken anywhere, more so because like the writing on this is very basic. There's maybe like some potentially good ideas inside the script, but none of it's executed really well. Like nothing's really done amazingly well. So overall, this is just meh. I don't know. It's just, and it's just meh. Like I'm not being like overly harsh on it because I don't think it was like absolutely terrible, but it was just formulaic and very generic, in my opinion. So that's my thoughts.
Danny G.
So this is a movie about imagination, right? And given that you might think there would be some imagination in the script writing, and it just wasn't. Like everything is exactly what you think it is. Everything is very by the numbers. Everything is very, very surface level. And yeah, it really feels like both of you said, it feels a lot like an AI wrote this just by assembling familiar pieces of horror movies. And really what really killed it for me was not just that there wasn't anything interesting going on, but also that almost everything about it was unmotivated, right? Like everything from the creature designs to character actions to how the plot unfolded, all of it was kind of, and then nothing happens. And there's very little point to any of it, and there's very little thought or creativity. Like I can deal with, cheap production values. I can deal with maybe rough delivery or rough execution if there's something interesting going on, and that just isn't here.
Honestly, I'm finding it very hard to.
See you all next week.
Yeah. That's literally. It was like when I left the cinema, I was thinking, what the hell what are we gonna talk about when it comes to this film? Because there's literally nothing much. It's.
Yeah.
you would have thought this was written by a first-time scriptwriter. If it well, I'm pretty sure it wasn't, but if it
It's
was,
not like the first draft, doesn't it?
yeah, it was like a first draft script. It was like, what was going on? It's okay. You know what? Before we even get into, I think we're like what in the spoiler zone section. I like what we're just 15 minutes in. I don't think there's gonna be much to say in this one, but
I've got a few things, but
Yeah.
that's just the general bottom line of it, right?
Yeah, let's
Like if you're watching this because you saw the trailer, thought it looked interesting, save your money and go watch Poltergeist instead. It's not a perfect movie either, but it's a lot more fun.
I'll go watch Dune 2 again.
Or that, yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want this kind of story, like Poltergeist did it better, what is it, 40 years ago? Maybe?
Okay, well, there had to be some likes. Isn't there anything that you thought? Because you guys did mention like there was some, I think Hervey mentioned that there was some things that you could see that they were trying to do, which you was like, okay, I was interested here and there. I think Daniel, you must have said there was like one. Did you say what? There was one thing?
Well, there's a couple of things that I think are commendable. One of them is that I think the bear is decently creepy, and in the few scenes where they really use him, it's like it's not scary exactly, but it's decent. It's decently creepy and unsettling. Like every time he moves just a little bit, right? I think that is like that puts you in this little uncanny valley of like this is not supposed to be happening. Like there's a scene where what's the younger daughter's name, Alice, where she's in bed and she says goodnight to Chauncey, and then as she falls asleep, Chauncey kind of leans into her. That was subtle enough and simple enough that it was effective. Or when, the loser boyfriend is, rampaging through the house and he kind of walks up the stairs past Alice, like Chauncey's sitting next to her, and as he walks up the staircase being a jerk, Chauncey kind of turns his head a little bit. Like that's fine. And the therapist scene I thought was decently creepy as well. But that's kind of it. But then none of that mattered really. Like the fact that it's the teddy, like it wasn't even really the teddy bear. Like that whole reveal that only Jessica sees the teddy bear was completely pointless.
What? That was gonna be my one positive, was that like I feel like the twist was interesting, but it doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't go anywhere.
Well, that's why it's not interesting to me, because
yeah.
Right, it's okay, fine, but like the bear doesn't mean anything to her, right? Like it's not established that bear is significant to her, other than she's always seen the entity as the bear. And it's totally believable that like and I have only seen it once. I think if I saw it again for some reason, I don't think it would hold up, because I'm sure Alice reacts to the teddy bear. Right? Jessica finds the teddy bear in the basement and then gives it to Alice as a present. And Alice likes the bear and talks to the bear all the time. But then later on, it's revealed that like she was making up the bear, or was like she wasn't actually holding it.
Doesn't she find the bear herself? Doesn't she find the bear herself, Alice? Because she goes into the basement and the bear's just sat there.
Yeah.
That makes even less sense. Why does she find the bear if the bear doesn't exist?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
If Jessica found the bear, maybe that's why I misremembered it, because that's the version that makes sense. Like if Alice found the bear and said, "Hey, this will be a nice. This is my old teddy bear from my childhood. I give this to my stepchild as a bonding." Like that makes sense.
Yeah.
But if the bear doesn't even exist, then why did Alice react to it?
Well, yeah, because Alice found the bear because now the entity, or whatever the demon, whatever it was trying to get Jessica, but they used Alice in order to get to Jessica. So that's why it kind of allowed itself to be seen.
But why not, like from a script writing perspective, why not just have it be a possessed teddy bear? Isn't that better?
Yeah, but I think it's because they wanted to try and do something new. And I do agree with what you guys are saying. But yeah, I think they only went.
I feel like they probably thought of the twist of the teddy bear only being seen by Jessica, and then they decided that probably it's best for her to just like discover the teddy bear as opposed to,
maybe.
They could have even stuck with that twist. They could have even stuck with that twist, to be honest, where like Jessica's having like maybe because obviously like she's experienced trauma in that house, and maybe going back into that house and maybe like triggering a few things, and she's seeing the teddy bear, and then she then kind of gives it to Alice, and they could have maybe even done a scene where maybe the dad, who was the most pointless character in this movie, I don't know why he existed because he wasn't even in there, but maybe like
the story is about Jessica bonding with the girls, right? So and for that to be the case, the husband has to be gone.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, that's fine. But I'm like,
so they have to become a family in order to overcome this crisis. I think that's the one part of the story that really works.
Does it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, like if it's about them coming together as a family in a crisis, then they have to be on their own, right? If the husband was also there, then the dynamic would be completely different.
Yeah, like that was just like kind of like a throwaway comment. To be fair, yeah. Like that I can care too less.
I mean, there's not a lot to him, but like he exists so that he can go away, so that the stepmom and the children are on their own.
Yeah,
that's why
they don't really bond, and like I feel like the other daughter, Taylor, I believe her name is, like her change from kind of being like the typical teen angst, like rude, dismissive, and this, that, and the other, and like being rebellious against the stepmom or whatever, kind of just flips when she speaks to the old lady, and the old lady explains Jessica's backstory, even though Jessica's been trying to explain it to her herself. But then that happens, and it's like, okay, cool, let me go and help her. Let me go and like risk my life to go and like save this woman that I've just literally just been rude to for however long. And it doesn't like, and if there was like maybe like some type of like trauma response as to why she was acting that way to Jessica, then it maybe would have made it a little bit more believable, where she kind of like cared a little bit more or something like that. But the way that was done was very dry.
Yeah, what I did like kind of was that she didn't stay an annoying teenager the entire time. Like when things got serious, she became responsible, right? But
it wasn't earned. It wasn't earned, I would say, her change.
Yeah, I kind of took it as, well, she's being a moody teenager, but like in a real emergency, she still cares about her family on some level.
And
so I was okay with that.
I think sometimes as well with the whole transition on her, like, not believing her stepmom and then believing her stepmom after speaking to the woman. I think with that is because generally, a lot of the times when our parents will tell us something, right? Well, for most people, when our parents will tell us something, we don't really take it in. But then we'll watch a motivational video from someone else, and they'll pretty much say the same thing our parents said, and then we'll take it in, if that makes sense. So I think with that situation, like, I understood why they did it like that, because of course she doesn't want to kind of like hear from the woman that technically took her mom's place, her biological mom's place, but she'll take it in from a random lady, because that's generally that's how life is all the time. Our parents will tell us something, we don't really listen, but then someone else will pretty much tell us the same thing our parents told us, and we'll take that in. So I kind of took it like that. So I understood it. Yeah, I understood why they did that, But what was I actually liked about the film was the elderly woman.
She was the worst part.
The reason why I liked her is because she was unintentionally funny, especially when she died. That was freaking hilarious.
Sure. Okay.
You see, that was hilarious. The way that she got pummeled and just that was hilarious. But wait, why do you think she was the worst part?
Well, she's a pure exposition machine.
Yeah, basically.
I remember what I called the clumsiest exposition earlier. I think that was relating to House of the Dragon, so never mind. But this takes the cake in terms of just explaining the plot and just stating out things. Like, okay. Actually kind of like the idea, as with a lot of this in this movie, there's if you dig deep enough, you find something interesting. Like this whole idea of somebody who deep into old age is obsessed with imaginary friends, not because she believes in them, but because they've been a factor in her life for decades, and nobody's ever believed her, and she's being treated kind of like a child with an imaginary friend, right? Like nobody takes her seriously, nobody respects her, nobody listens to her, and that is a lot like being a child with an imaginary friend, right? Like everybody humors you, nobody takes you seriously, nobody everybody kind of laughs at you behind your back, kind of thing. Like with a child, it's in a more innocent way. With an adult, it's more malicious. But there were kind of parallels there. Like she's mentally stuck in this place of a child with an imaginary friend. And I thought that kind of rhymed a little bit with whatever else was going on in the movie. But everything else about her is just purely about exposition and explaining the plot. At the slightest prompting, she explains her life story and explains the entire mythology of what's going on, and it doesn't even matter. Like there's nothing about the monster that really needs to be understood other than it's evil, and it goes after the children, although not what. I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but point is, like everything about that character is just like the most lazy and most superficial and most convenient way of writing a character like this, and nobody put any thought into like what her frame of mind was and why she did what she did and why she would, talk to the children again. Like if she had come across as like this creepy stalker neighbor, but actually she did it because she knew about the imaginary friend. Like you can imagine a version of this that like is interesting, or at least a little bit. But every time she talked, I just cringed in my seat in the cinema because like it was so bad, like even worse than everything else about the movie. I mean, yeah, she dies in a ridiculous way that's funny in its own way. But at that point, I was like 20 minutes past caring about that character anyway.
I just found that for me personally, I found that to be like, yeah, you're right. She was generic, but there were just moments from her where she was just unintentionally funny. Because like I gave you like, so I think that's for me because
some of her line deliveries were like a little bit entertaining.
You get what I'm saying? So she had that Karen personality mixed with being, even though she was, it was full of deception, but it seemed like she cared. But at the same time, she was like a Karen mixed in one. So I kind of liked that portrayal. But look, I'm just trying to find good things about this film. You know what I'm saying? That's why
I've got more good things if you want. Like,
okay, so
I think the idea of like a demonic entity preying on the innocence and naivete and optimism of a child's mind is really interesting. Like it's like it can't be the first time somebody did this, but I thought the basic idea of it was interesting enough. This whole idea that the scavenger hunt is really a magic ritual, that's a neat idea. It feels really like innocent and childish, but actually it's like a textbook magic ritual. It just dressed up in childish ways or dressed up as a child's game. And that way the entity tricks like this. I like just in fiction in general, I like the idea of the demon who sits outside of reality and needs the cooperation of humans in order to either get their souls or to open a gateway so that they can come into the physical world. Like this basic idea is something that I find really interesting, and it often doesn't get done really properly, or really like people often don't do very interesting things with that. But the idea of getting a child to pose as an imaginary friend and then manipulate their base, like everything that is good about children, right? Their innocence, their curiosity, their willingness to please. Like these are all positive character traits, and then to kind of twist them into performing a magic ritual to let them in. Like I kept hoping it would go that way, but it kind of did, but not really. But the basic idea I thought was really really decent and had potential.
No, honestly, yeah, even the list was very interesting. I just think it was, and as well, the moment where she was gonna, what was that scene where she was gonna put her hand through the
spike?
Like that's classic, right? You have to spend you have to shed blood to perform magic.
Yes, that was a requirement.
Like having that dressed up in like as a child's game, I thought that was probably the scariest moment. Because there was this dread of like there was a cop out at the end where she didn't really injure herself, or every time they do it cuts away immediately and there's no consequences. Like Jessica impaling her hand with a scissor should have some form of consequence maybe, but it's basically forgotten about in 2 seconds.
They should have used that. Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
But this basic idea of you have to sacrifice something, you have to shed blood in order to perform magic, and getting a child to do that basically by exploiting everything that is good about children, that has potential in a better script.
I think they should have that should have been the main chunk of the film, as in like the center focus, like the focus, as in the vehicle. They should have used that as the vehicle for the film, if that makes sense.
It's like a countdown, right? Like there's 10 things to
Exactly.
do, and there's 8 things remaining. No, there's 6 things remaining, and there's this ticking clock where you have to, well, maybe Jessica has to figure out what's going on before Alice runs out of items on the list. Something,
exactly.
right? Like there's ideas here, but it's always ideas are cheap, and it's all about execution.
Exactly, and that could have like kind of entwined with Alex obviously starting to remember, obviously, you know, her interactions with that demon or whatever as well. Do you know what I'm saying? So they could have, it could have been a good story. It's just, yeah, it felt like it was the first draft, and it felt like it was a script that either was ChatGPT or was a script that you just wanted to get it over the line, and yeah, but that's
an assignment that somebody had to hand in, as opposed to an idea. Like all the good ideas are in the premise, and everything else is kind of just, no, we have to actually write the script. Like everything about going to the dream world is just the lamest thing ever. It's just a hallway.
Yeah.
Right. And the monster, like everything about, I said earlier, everything about the monster is unmotivated. Like, why does it look like a serial killer with the bag over his head? Why? Like the teddy bear, okay, like I get, but why the spider? Why the guy with the bag over his head? Like what's the motivation? Why this as opposed to anything else?
It's literally just meant to be in the background.
Because it's creepy. Yeah.
It's literally.
But I always like it when like there's a mythology behind the thing, and where it's maybe if these had been different symbols of what, like this idea of like the evil teddy bear, I think is fine. Like it takes the idea of the teddy bear because that's like a symbol of innocence, kind of like that's a child's toy, right? And then it turns into this bear monster at some point. That makes sense.
And the whole thing of like, because like they kept saying about like the monster was like hungry, and like it's like always hungry and this and the other, and it's like essentially like if I understood correctly, feeding off the imagination of the children, that it's like kidnapping or whatever. It then kind of feels like you could have maybe, especially in like the dream world, where they could have maybe used imagination as like some type of vehicle for them to actually be able to get out of that place as well. If it feel like that could have been like a missed opportunity. That's a missed opportunity on my part, because I felt like that could have made it a little bit more interesting.
What if they had walked into a room and there's 100 children there that are all being drained of their life essence by like perverted toys?
Yeah.
Or like corrupted toys.
Yeah.
Like you could have gotten nuts in that sequence, right?
Yeah. Like that was another problem as well, is that like it's clearly been taking a lot of these kids. Like where are these kids? Like where are even the traces of like other kids that had been kidnapped or brought into this like dream world as well? And it's just
and apparently they're all over the place, right? Like it takes them 2 minutes to run into somebody else who's also being also as an imaginary friend.
Yeah.
So do we have any highlight moments? Was there a moment in the film where
speaking of that, actually, that was actually a very funny scene at the end of the movie when they go to the hotel and then they see what looks like a bed and they're like, we're not doing this hotel. Next hotel. That was actually
Problem was it was the third ending out of 4.
Yeah, which was confusing.
Right, at that point I had already like they lost me on the second ending. But then there were at least 2 more.
Yeah. Also, sorry, another plot point that didn't really go anywhere was like the whole like mum and her being like psycho or whatever, and like her appearing in the house. Like that just didn't seem to lead anywhere. It was just, again, like it felt like there was like the scene that they wanted to make creepy with like the whole tea party and whatever, and then they've like put the mum in that scene. And it's
I like that scene where we always just see like a hand, and like that was I was going to mention that as one of my highlights, because just in terms of a creepy scene, that was
which scene?
That was one of
like the shadow of like someone getting up as well. I was like, okay, cool. That's like that is like creepy, but then it just then doesn't.
It didn't amount to anything. Like why was the mother in like a mental institution, and why did she break out, and why like does any of it mean anything other than producing a kind of generically creepy scene?
No.
Oh, you talking about the scene with the, for me, so are you guys talking about the scene where the daughter was having a tea party? Yeah, that was my highlight moment as well. That scene was really good.
But that again comes like just as a scene, I thought like that's a scene where I got a little bit excited, because it looked like we were getting some kind of answer or some kind of development or escalation, but then it's nothing. Like it turns out it's the mom. Okay, like the idea, like we think it's a ghost or it's a demon, but it's actually the mom. Like that's fine. That's a fine twist to have. But then just the ambulance shows up, takes her away, end of plot. Like it didn't mean anything, and because of that, it becomes kind of pointless.
Yeah,
like, nothing. At least I didn't pick up on any reason for why that happened, or why, like from a script perspective, why it was in the story. Like you could have had, and you know, there was this. You had the mom like in the room with doing the tea party, and then there's the demon behind Jessica, right? And then Alice says he's right behind you. She turns around, and the demon is gone, and then the mother tackles her. Right? Like why? Why is any of this happening? Right? Like every element of this, like you could imagine a good scene with that, but none of it adds up to anything or means anything or furthers the plot or says anything about the characters or expands on the premise or anything.
I have a question. Why because like you guys have now made me watch a few horror movies now. Why are horror movies not scary at the moment? Or like it just doesn't seem like I've seen a few and I'm like of the recent ones, and even like Megan, even though like Megan was like really well received, I wouldn't say it was like a complete horror movie. And I like I'm not like versed on sort of this genre of movies, but it just doesn't seem that it's that scary. It seems more silly to me, in my opinion.
I actually think it's because they're trying to make it accessible to a wider audience in terms of age groups. And obviously there's so much that you can do with a film that's rated 15.
You don't have to try very hard to make money on a $12 million movie, right? So these things are designed to be disposable. That like they draw you in with an interesting premise and a sufficiently creepy trailer, and then they try to make their money in the first weekend until word of mouth goes around that it's trash, and then a couple of months later you start selling it to streaming services. And that's the business model, right? That's how Blumhouse has been making their movies. And normally like in the past, we've praised Blumhouse a lot, like off camera mostly. Praised Blumhouse a lot for, you know, in the age of the $250 million superhero movie, like they just make solid movies that just need to make 30-40 million. And they just churn out moderate success after moderate success, and that adds up to a successful business. And I think in general, I want more movies to be like this, right? Like small budget, moderate budget, you know, executes well enough on an interesting idea to get a moderate audience, and then you rinse, repeat, and do it over and over again, and each one makes a little bit of money. I think that's a much healthier place for the movie industry to be in.
Is that an excuse?
And we also get stuff like this.
Yeah. I was gonna say, is that an excuse to not make the movie scary? Because I understand that they're just like churning out projects just to sort of make that sort of small amount of profit, but I don't know what's like the last horror movie that you watched that you thought was like genuinely like gave you chills and was like scary.
I don't know. There's a difference between being scary and creepy, I think.
Yeah.
Like I don't know that I'm genuinely like I'm grossed out by body horror, for example, and I'm uncomfortable watching it and I don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
But you know, things like ghost movies, haunted house movies, those are startling because they have jump scares in them. But that's also not the same as being scared. I think it's all about like you really have to build an atmosphere, and you really have to get the audience to suspend their disbelief and put themselves into the role or into the position of the characters. And when you do that, that's where it becomes scary. That's a long way of answering your question, which comes down to I don't know. But you know, I don't really watch horror movies to be scared. I watch them for the atmosphere, for the creepy atmosphere. And I think there are good movies. Like my thing is I've watched a lot of older horror movies over the past year. Exorcist 1 and 3, Alien 1, Friday the 13th, Halloween. Like these kinds of movies aren't really scary in the same way, but they can be creepy. And the good ones are the ones that really have a logic to them and really get you to buy into the situation. And Imaginary never rose to that level, right? Because you could just see like the basic idea and then the most obvious execution you could imagine.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I'm saying? What I said still, yeah, well, I just think it's because they're just trying to make it accessible to a wider audience. So,
like the teenagers I watched the movie with had a good time.
Yeah, but I feel like
they enjoyed the jump scare under the bed.
That's the thing. I genuinely think that's their goal. Is like to create like horror films nowadays. I don't think their goal is to make it unsettling or like Daniel said, for that creepy atmosphere. I think their goal is to just create a fun movie with jump scares that a lot of these, the kids, like the kids will enjoy, and people who are easily scared will enjoy as well. Because I think the last time I watched a very scary film that was unsettled was The Grudge, The Strangers, and As Above, So Below. So The Grudge must have came out like early 2000s, or 2006, I think. As Below, So something in the dams in Paris, that found footage film that came out 2014. And what was the other one that I said? Strangers, that must have came out early 2000s as well. Those films I found very unsettling. So I think with those films, but those films were very, I think The Grudge was 18, rated 18, and the other one's rated 18 as well. So I think all of them were rated 18. And probably the found footage film was probably 15, but that was unsettling as well. Those films, you know what I'm saying, they're not going to make the most money. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it's 18. So like I said, I think a lot of the times these production companies are trying to make as much profit as they can. They can't make as much profit as they can if their film excludes a whole demographic. So the majority, you know what I'm saying? So yeah.
Maybe I've also grown up, Maybe I've matured and I don't find these things scary anymore.
Yeah, I think horror movies just stop being genuinely scary at some point.
Yeah.
I think they can. I don't think it can. I think they just need to pull. I think they just need to create a film that centers around like it pretty much triggers certain emotions, pull our emotional. Yeah, I don't think horror can ever die. I do think there are some stuff that they can create a film that most of us like. For example, Final Destination. The reason why Final Destination was so successful is because it's so relatable. Well, not relatable, but it's so like
feels real.
Situation. Yeah, exactly. It's like there's a lot of realism. That situation can actually happen, which it wasn't scary, but it was very unsettling because damn, like I've always imagined myself.
You never went to the fun fair or to like a theme park the same again afterwards.
Exactly. So I don't think horror can ever die if they just started to create more films around ideas that are unsettling, things that will be like, oh, that could actually, maybe not necessarily that could actually happen, but just things that I don't know what I'm trying to say, like things that are relatable and things that could,
I think that's it.
Like,
we've said this before, I think in our Night's Poem review, that genuinely good horror does not make you believe that the monster is real. It reminds you of a fear you've had in the past, or something that is so universal that you can empathize with it. Like Terminator is genuinely scary. I think the first Terminator movie, because like you don't believe for a second that time traveling robots are real, and that they have Austrian accents and stuff like that, right? It's like, but this idea of being stalked is something that anybody can relate to, and maybe most people have on some level experienced at some point. Not that everybody has been stalked, but this idea of, maybe you get this idea that somebody's following you, and maybe you think they're about to rob you or something, but you instantly feel unsafe. And it takes a while for your brain to shake that, even when you rationally know that the danger is gone. Right? So, and I think that is what Terminator taps into, this idea of you cannot be safe, and you will never be safe again, and the danger will just keep coming, and even if you keep running, eventually you will get tired, but the danger will not. Right?
No, yeah.
Like, and you could go down different different classical examples, like Alien, not realistic at all in terms of making the audience believe that it's real, but this idea of being somebody else's food, or being used by somebody, like your body being used by somebody else for some sinister purpose. Like that is something on a visceral level we can get into. Like we can get into that headspace, and that is why we experience it as scary, even if we don't believe for a second that it's real, right? And imaginary just fails to do that on any level.
100%.
And it easily could have, like this whole idea of like a child's innocence being co-opted. I think that is something that could have been it, right? But they didn't quite get there, in my opinion, or didn't do nearly enough with it in order to actually drive that home. And they didn't make a point in the end of any kind, right? It's just the sequence of events. Like there's the basic premise, and there's individual scenes that are, like competent, as long as you don't think too hard about them, like what they mean in the broader context of the story, and then a bunch of stuff happens and the movie's over. That's basically the deal.
No, and you said it perfectly. I think just playing on our fears is something is something which I think a lot horror films need to start doing more. And I think stuff
like body horror and jump scares are crutches. That's what you do when you can't genuinely scare somebody. But you still get I was startled when that that scene with the bed happened. Right, where they're all hiding under the blanket, and Jessica hears something, so she looks, and we expect Chauncey to come after her, but then it's Alice startling her, and I was startled, and I knew it was coming, and I hated myself for it, but job done. But they got the emotional response out of me, but the response was mostly annoyance.
My problem is like I expect it to not happen. And I feel like they've done this whole jump scare thing too much, where they're trying to build up the tension and stuff like that. I know that nothing bad is going to happen, or nothing bad will happen, and then they'll delay it so that they actually get you the second time round. And I don't know. I feel like I'm just conditioned to expect that in the movie, which then doesn't really affect me.
Yeah, or when it's so well telegraphed that there might as well be a countdown on the screen.
Yeah.
Right, like that. I think the Insidious movies are infamous for that, where it's coming and when it's coming, and you're still scared, and you're still startled by it, and you hate yourself for falling for it. But it's legitimately not scary, and I think it's like the low-hanging fruit of horror, where you can get a reaction out of the audience, but it doesn't last. No. Is there any jump scare that has stuck with you in the way a genuinely scary scene from a movie might? It's the cheapest of the cheap.
Yeah, I feel like what actually worked in this movie, even though the whole person with a bag over their head didn't really lead to anything, was just scenes in the basement where it's just about in the background, where you can barely make it out in the background, and she's kind of just walking and doing a thing, and it's just that thing. And again, it's just that thing watching you whilst you're unaware, and that kind of plays on real life fears, essentially, like you mentioned before. I feel like that was where it handled some of the creepy aspect of this movie, really well, to be honest.
Yeah, it's decently scary, but it's also very by the numbers.
Again, yeah.
And it doesn't add, it doesn't lead to anything, or it doesn't tell you anything about not about Jessica's character, not about what the monster is like. It's just generically creepy guy in the basement. Yeah. Like we've said that before, but that's really what it's like. It's stuck on step 2 of telling a story, kind of thing, and it doesn't know where to go from there.
Yeah.
Would you have guys appreciated it more if it was a streaming film?
No.
I mean, if it was a streaming film, I'd have turned it off 20 minutes in.
Okay.
Right. It's like you can really tell with a movie when the writers have an idea and when they don't, and here they very clearly didn't. Or the idea was entirely the premise.
Yeah. I felt like they really ambled for the first half of the movie. They really ambled, and it didn't really go anywhere, and it was there wasn't really a point to the story to really start off with. It was just obviously they introduced the teddy bear and stuff like that, but nothing really was happening. There was no development to the plot at all for the first half of the movie.
It wasn't really an escalation. There wasn't a progression. It's just things happening.
Yeah.
Hey man.
So here's a question: did you like this more or less than Night Swim?
I think I preferred Night Swim. In my,
Actually,
I think I
like
prefer Night Swim.
the next one.
I felt like the stuff that was like kind of like the family interaction and stuff like that was a little bit more interesting, in the way that the family kind of came together to like sort of deal with what was happening to them was a little bit more interesting in Night Swim compared to sort of what this was in this movie.
Actually, I take it back. I enjoyed Night Swim more. Sorry, I take it back. Take it back.
Sorry, did you like it more than Night Swim or less?
I take it back. I enjoyed Night Swim more than this, because now that I think about it, Night Swim felt more. It felt like there was more at stake. Like there was moments where I was like, ooh, even like the moment where the dad was about to kill the other guy's son in the whole pool party. That scene was like, ooh, that was kind of tense. So I don't think there was that type of tense moment in Imaginary. I think everything was very monotone, as in like it was very basic, just one tone. Yes, I would probably say there were moments with Night Swim, even though I did not like Night Swim, even though I didn't like it. I think there were moments where like, ooh, this is, like I said, the stakes were high. So yeah,
there were better moments. I feel like it was like a better story than what was sort of produced in Imaginary, and I feel like it had like a better, creepier scene as well, with like the Asian lady that was like in the sort of the care home, but like that scene was genuinely creepy as well. So it just fundamentally was a better movie.
Yeah, my take on it is that I think Imaginary tells a more coherent story, just from start to finish. It is a story, whereas Night Swim is two different stories wedged into one movie, and they don't talk to each other. Yeah. And that is what killed that movie. But the two individual parts, or at least the parts with the evil hot spring, has more going for it. They just didn't, like, it's just crowded out by all the other stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I think just as a movie, Imaginary, I think is probably better, just in terms of a story with a beginning, middle, and end. But Night Swim has more interesting ideas in it, I think.
Okay. Well, guys, last thoughts.
This was just cheap thrills, essentially. This was a cheap thrills movie. Nothing really going through. No, sorry. There was good ideas in there that just weren't expanded on really well. Probably needs to go back to the drawing board to really flesh that out. I feel like actually if they, decided to do a sequel, because they, there is teased the possibility of there being more to the story. They could probably try to flesh out a little bit more, add a little bit more mythology to some of the evil entity. But as it currently is, it just cheap thrills that was just put out there to make some money.
Yeah, same basic conclusion. It just doesn't add up to anything, and individual, like, I don't think it's good enough to just have a couple of decent scenes in it. There's just the fact that none of it adds up and builds up to anything, and there isn't really a conclusion to it. It's just a sequence of things that happen. I think that really kills the movie for me, and why I wouldn't want to watch it again.
Well, for me, I do think my last thought is they should have just gone straight to streaming. It just wasn't, I do think the script as well as definitely is a script that they should have worked on more on. It was, I think the dialogue for me is what kind of weighed down the film, but it had some good ideas. I'll give it that. It had some good ideas. It had some good scenes, which we've mentioned. It's a basic film. It's a basic film, basic horror film. Wouldn't really consider it horror, but yeah, it's a basic film, which I probably would have enjoyed more personally for me if I saw it on like friggin' Amazon, because you hardly find any good films on Amazon. So yeah, I definitely probably would have enjoyed it if I saw it on Amazon. But yeah. Yeah, guys.
Hopefully, and there's no reason for why a streaming movie has to be bad, right?
No, it doesn't.
I don't think there's any excuse here. I think they really needed to take the basic idea and then just keep working on it. And it feels like they stopped after the first draft. And I think even as a streaming movie, that's not good enough. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many movies coming out. Why bother with this one?
No, I hear what you're saying, but like for Amazon, personally, I haven't found it's very hard to find hidden gems in Amazon. So
Yeah.
I think if I saw
It's
this
not
on
special.
Amazon, so if I saw this in Amazon, I'd be like, okay, it's what you'd expect, but it's not terrible. It's definitely one of the satisfactory films where I wouldn't have felt totally robbed when it comes
Like,
to
it's
my.
not an incompetent movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's characters, there's a story, there's a beginning, middle, and end. There's a climax at the end. There's a conclusion. There's 4 endings. So maybe cut 2 of those. Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's not. I've seen much worse movies that are just outright broken, or incompetent acting. Like, the acting is not bad in this.
No.
Like, I think Jessica kind of switches between quite good and pretty terrible, but like from one
That's
line
probably the best
to
way
the
to
next.
describe it. Yeah, sorry, that's the best way to describe it. I think with Jessica as well, like, yeah, like you said, there were times where she was good, but there were times where she was just bad. And like I said, I mentioned this time as well, I just didn't enjoy her acting. And I think mainly that was because of the dialogue. It's because of the stuff that she was saying and the stuff that she had to execute. It didn't look good. And I don't blame her. So I've seen her in a Netflix show which was really good. So she's not even a bad actor. I just think mainly it was the dialogue that just put the level down personally. And I don't think it was their fault. Like, it just, how can you?
I mean, I'm happy to blame it on the writers and the director. I mean, it's not like she ruined good material or anything. It's just that character just is bafflingly inconsistent.
Like I said, I honestly think that's mainly to do with her lines, because I don't know how you're supposed to execute a generic line. Honestly, your acting's gonna come out generic because you're saying generic lines a lot of the time.
The script can't decide how long they've been a family, right? Like, some of the lines suggest that she's meeting them for the first time. At least I thought so. And in others, they've been like a family unit for a long time, and the younger daughter has accepted her, the older daughter hasn't. But it's not consistent. It switches from one scene to the next.
I know you didn't like the grammar with the exposition dump, and I didn't like it either because she was literally just pure exposition dump. But at least she tried with her lines, and at least she tried to make it a little bit entertaining, even though she was just kind of reeling off the whole story, basically. And for the child actor as well, for her being a child actor, I feel like she did a good enough job.
No real complaints there. Like, I don't think it's the performances that are the problem. It's entirely what's happening on screen.
Well, guys, hopefully you enjoyed today's discussion. That was Imaginary. And what will we be reviewing next week?
Next week, we're giving Shogun a shot.
All right, guys.
I've seen some scenes, like some clips from it. It looks really good. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, looking forward to that as well. Especially after watching The Blue-Eyed Samurai. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that. But yeah, guys, Heavy.
Like, share, subscribe. Yeah.
Hi guys.
If you like cheap thrills.
Yeah. Hi guys, let us know what you think or what you thought of Imaginary if you have seen it in the comment section below, and we will see you next week. Au revoir.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.